Hi guys, welcome back to Dialogue, the dialogue on analog music reproduction. In this episode, we're gonna take a look at the best type, mainly of copper conductors. What they are made of, how they are made, why is this so important? I know a lot of you are gonna hate me, I know a lot of you don't absolutely believe in this religion of cables and conductors, high quality conductors, but we do, a lot of people do. Let's go. Okay guys, so today I wanted to dedicate a video mainly on OCC copper. Who has been following me for a few years knows how much I love this material and its amazing sonic characteristics. But there's other types, and there is a history, an evolution. And actually, there's also something better I discovered. So let's take a step backward and let's try to understand what is the problem and the main types of conductors, of copper conductors. Let's go. Okay, so for those of you who have experienced the use of a high quality cable, because a lot of people unfortunately denigrate them without even trying, who knows how much, not always, but in most cases, you do have an increase in quality. Maybe you're interested to understand what is the problem and the different types of conductors. What is the main problem? The main problem is that if we use normal copper or even worse alloys or other less conductive materials, but we're not going to talk about those. Let's just focus on copper. In most cases, if we just take the normal kind, for example, we have a lot of impurities inside the conductor itself, plus a high number of crystals. And all these impurities and crystals create a non-linear resistivity in the flow of the electric current, hence the signal, hence problems. Well, not problems, but you're not going to have that rich tonality, those details, that finesse, those extra resolution that really identifies the timbre or the transients in different passages, difficult passages of the music. In that case, when you have a high quality conductor cable, you really have that extra length, that extra headroom that gives you the possibility to appreciate that. Again, as I said in a different video where I went through the myth of cables, here's a link, in some systems, in some hi-fi systems, this is not that evident. I experienced this myself. It's actually more evident, as I said in that video, but I also said other things, in lower quality budget systems. When you introduce a quality cable, you're really going to feel the difference. It's not the opposite. I thought it was. It's not. Actually, when you have very efficient stuff, the quality of the cables is secondary at that point. It's not so important. But this is another story. Check that video if you want to learn more. Instead, we want to talk about this, and plus I want to get right immediately out of the way the concept of multiple metals. Like, for example, a lot of cables seem better because they have a silver plating. No, actually. Well, at least let's just say that I do not recommend them. Why? Very simple, because there are various metals employed in the conductor, in the cable, which have different electrical characteristics, which gonna go in opposition. It's not gonna be a homogeneous and a harmonious flow. Hence, that is why I think the best is to stick with one type of metal. And actually, considering that most of our gear has copper inside, it's just better to go for copper. Nevertheless, as we all know, or at least I hope you know, silver is the best. If it is arranged in a high quality geometry, and I would say, as we will see, a precise type of silver conductor. In any case, apart from these problems, I want to jump in now in the main type of copper conductors that we are all currently using in our system. Let's start. Okay, type number 1, TPC, tough pitch copper. It's the standard copper that you can find in any kind of cable. If it's not a high quality cable, you're probably using that. And that's just one piece of metal that's have been melted once. There's no other extra processing. At that point, when you have the rod, you just start to machine it until you have the desired diameter. So it's very simple, very straightforward, and obviously, as we will see with the other different types, high quality types, there is no extra type of treatment of the crystals and the inner structure of the wire. Hence, a very low quality, dull, low resolution sound. Let's try to understand the purity of this. Well, you usually analyze, for example, a good indicator is the amount of oxygen. Because as we said, with the presence of oxygen avoids, along with the crystals, as we will see, as I already mentioned before, creates this different resistivity, and hence we have a problem in the flow, in the homogeneous flow. And here we have a lot of oxygen. We have around 300/500 ppm, parts per million, which is not a huge amount in absolute terms, but compared with the other types of cables, oh boy. Plus, we have to also talk about the transmission. And here I usually take a look at the crystal size and number. Now here we have a high number of crystals, and as we said, the crystals are a problem. And plus, the crystals are also very tiny. Hence, that's why we have so many. And the average, I have to read here, obviously, the average is 0.007 meters, so they're very small. And usually, within a meter, you find 150 crystals. As you're starting to understand, crystals are important. Okay, let's proceed to number 2. Okay, our second type is OFC. I'm sure a lot of you have heard that. Oxygen-free copper, or also called OFHC, oxygen-free high thermal conductivity. This was developed in Japan in 1975, and this is already a huge leap in quality. In fact, already in that period, they started to use that, not also in certain audio applications, that was the lower part of interest, but also in military grade and electronics, in important stuff, as you can imagine, because it does make a difference. It does make a difference in the signal transmission. People are not working on these things just because it's fun or for our audio system, because it does make a difference. Okay, so let's try to understand better the technology. In this case, we have an extrusion from the melted metal, and at that point, it takes place in a gas-free, including oxygen, environment. Hence, there's also other processing, but let's just say that it has much, much less oxygen inside. In fact, if we take a look at the purity of this type of copper, we have only 10 ppm, 10 parts per million. So there is a huge leap. Before it was 200/500, now we're down to 10, which is rather good. What else can we say? Here we start to analyze the purity in terms of number of nines, which, as we will see after, it doesn't make any sense when we're talking about OCC. In any case, in this case, it does, and we're around 5 nines or 6 nines in the best types of solutions, the best cables. What is this? The purity of the copper, 99,9999, and the total number of nines is just an indicator of purity, which means how many impurities it's still inside in the residue. But as we have seen, not that much actually. In this case, when we take a look at the crystals, we have, first of all, an increase of conductivity. Talking about transmission, this is very interesting. We have a 0.5/2% increase in conductivity. So already, if you understand this process, it's giving results also in conductivity. So not only quality, which is, as we all know, debatable. But in this terms of conductivity, something that you can perfectly measure, because you can't measure just quality like that of the signal. You can in terms of frequencies, but there's something else going on, you guys. We know that. Who has understood that cables make a difference? Just understood that there's something else that's going on. Obviously, that's the only possibility remaining. And we are not capable of perfectly and everything measure. Because as I always say, for example, when you do a blood test, you're looking for specific things. It's not that the blood test is going to tell you everything that's happening in the blood. The same, the measurements. You're looking for specific things when you measure something. Other things are invisible because you're not measuring them. It's very simple. In any case, I don't want to fire up anyone here. So, as we were talking about crystals, obviously the number now is reducing. And also the dimension is increasing, which is something good. In fact, if before we had 0.007 meters in diameter, now they're a little larger. It's 0.02 meters. And you find a number variable of the average is 50 crystals per meter. So we had a much clear and refined sound in these terms. I also wanted to mention a variation of OFC, which was also developed actually in 1975 by Itachi, which is called LCOFC, which is linear crystal. And what is this? Very simply, after the same process of OFC, they reheat the copper, which is called annealing process. It's been annealed. I hope the pronunciation is correct. My English, as you know, I'm Italian. I do make some mistakes. I'm sorry about that. And they reheat the metal, not melting it, okay? They heat it as much as possible in order to let the impurities go away. And this makes a higher quality with less impurities, and also the grains are a little more long in this case, which is something very positive. And in fact, in this case, we reached the 6 nines of purity and just a better signal transmission. Then we can proceed finally to our third type. Our third type is the core of this video, the OCC copper, Ohno Continuous Cast Copper, also known as pcocc, which is pure copper Ohno Continuous Cast. In this case, within the acronym, we have the name of the inventor, Professor Atsumi Ohno of the Chiba Institute of Japan, who in 1985 developed this technology and employed in the following years. And in this case, things radically change. The technology employed is very different because in this case, we have a first extrusion, okay, like the other types of coppers, of conductors. But then they remelt it completely in these molds, which are heated molds, specially heated molds. And at that point, the wire, the metal, the copper, is slowly drawn from that in a forcible manner. It's slowly drawn, not extruded. It is different. It is slowly drawn. And at that point, you're practically pulling that same crystal. Okay, this is the crucial point of Ohno Continuous Cast. So that's why it's almost a casting process, but it's continuous. It's always in the phase of melting, and it's slightly drawn very slowly, but they're pulling the same crystal. There are not that many crystals inside. Actually, the same crystal is pulled up to 125 meters. In contrast with what we were saying before, the 0.007 or 002 of the TPC and the OFC, with OCC, that's why it's also called monocrystal copper. That's why, because it's just one crystal practically, unless you have a 200-meter wire. Obviously, then you have two crystals, or even less or more, it depends. In any case, we're talking about speaker cables, interconnects, not a chance. It's always the same crystal, which means we have a number of impurities up to, well, less than actually, 5 ppm, parts per million. Wow. Half that of OFC. And when you start to have these, it's very difficult to do. And as we have said, the crystal is just one. Actually, you have 0.008 crystals, not even one, per meter. So as you can understand, that is why, again, it's called monocrystal copper, and that is why we have this fantastic transmission where we don't have any obstacles. The flow is almost perfect. We have a very natural and rich sound, and you can also understand now, even though I didn't go in depth in the process, why this costs a little more. Nevertheless, don't go for the high pricey cables, the high pricey labels. No need. As I explained in several videos that I made, I'll just link one here, you can make your own cables very easily, especially power cables, which are very important and very easy to do. Just peel one end, stick the plug, do the same on the other side. You can connect the shield to the ground and things like that if you want, and then you're ready. That's it. Very simple. And at that point, you're just getting bulk cable, which does not cost that much. Even only, I suggest in one of my first videos, a $10 OCC Neotech cable. Wawa Gazawa, high quality. Instead of spending hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands sometimes, of dollars and euro on these cables. That's the part that I also hate in the cable industry. Absolutely. Don't think that I'm defending that. Absolutely. But I do defend quality. And you can achieve it on your own. Oh, I forgot to mention. Here comes in also silver, because we also have OCC silver, which is, together, as I said, with a very good mind thought, well projected geometry, because you can't just put a silver wire. You need a special geometry, and there you have to get high quality bulk cables like Neotech, for example, which I adore. And at that point, silver OCC cable is going to be the top of the tops. Almost, actually, because there is one more type. Before passing to the other mysterious type, I just wanted to mention also the problems that OCC underwent. Because starting from 2013, the company, Furukawa, that had the copyright, we could say, the patent, who was also the manufacturer of the main one, at least, of OCC copper, ceased its production. So a lot of companies had to start to make their own or buy the Chinese one, which I don't know how good that is, actually. There isn't that much information, papers, analysis. So if you go on Amazon, on eBay, there are dozens and dozens of cables, and they look top-notch, high-end, coming from China with OCC copper. In some cases, like the cables I've showed you, the SKW, they're Chinese, but they're very, very good. And I'm sure, at least my ears are sure, that that's OCC copper. In other cases, those things you find on eBay, I don't know what's in there. No guarantees, no certifications. While instead, if you go out and find other bulk cables like that from Furutech, they invented their alpha copper, that's OCC. Or for example, Oyaide, who made the 102 SS. They reached 102 stands for the conductivity, which reaches 102%, 102% of conductivity. Wow. And they made their own OCC copper, which is probably even better than the original OCC. And other companies are doing the same. For me, one of the best is Neotech, as you know. Okay, for our last type, number 4, we have something actually that a lot of people don't know of. I didn't know of it until a few weeks ago. Amorphous alloy. What is that? Well, it's a very special technology where I want to read it. They use something called melt spinning, where a molten metal is, or alloy actually, that's why it's called amorphous alloy, is pressure injected in a spinning wheel, which is immersed in liquid nitrogen. Doing this, the molecules are suddenly and immediately freezed. Okay, so the metal or the alloy does not have the time to reposition itself in crystals. That is why it's called amorphous. In fact, no shape. Here, as you can see in a few images, you can see the structure. And the result is something, first of all, flat because of the spinning process. Very, very thin, very extremely thin, and glass-like. So we have a perfect transmission. No obstacles whatsoever. 100% pure. Truly, truly amazing. There is one company that does it. Stealth Audio. There's probably even other ones. I haven't found them, but this one does. Makes his own cables like the Indra interconnects. They cost thousands and thousands of dollars because this process obviously costs a lot and very few companies do it. But according to what they say, because I never heard of them, this should be the perfect, the zenith, the top of the tops solution in terms of transmission quality. Well, hopefully on this channel I'll review that someday. I would be very, very glad. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave your comments on all these type of conductors if you want to discuss further about other types. Where you found your balance in terms of quality and expense and things like that. I'm very interested. Thank you again for watching, and remember, music was born analog.
Well guys, if you're enjoying my videos and you're enjoying my channel, please consider to subscribe by clicking the black and white logo here below. Also, don't forget to click the notification bell so you'll never miss an episode and you will become a true member of the analog community.